Hello, my name is Chris Meadows, and I'm the principal at Magoffin County High School, and I have two of my star teachers here with me today, Jennifer Howard, who teaches math, and Jason Arnett as a science teacher. And you'll notice that we had another teacher on there, Andrea Parsons, and she's an art teacher, and she's here with us today, but she's being interviewed on the Ron Daly Show during this segment, so we're going to cover for her. Our project, we're in the ACT group with KVEC, and basically what we have to do through that group is to look at a problem of practice within our school and then develop a theory of action to help fix that problem. And what we have posed here is what are the pieces of a high school playbook that should be emphasized to increase communication among all shareholders and therefore improve the learning culture. And I'll have to be honest with you, when we started out with this project earlier in the year, we started too big. We had 4 chapters that we wanted to do for this playbook. And as we tossed that around and tried to work on that and got some peer review from other schools at some of the meetings at KVEC, it was decided that we needed to scale it down. Sometimes that, I can eat a whole pizza, but it's one slice at a time. And we have a tendency sometimes to try to take it all on. And that's what we did initially. And those 4 chapters were focusing on professional learning, communicating with families, student ownership, and formative assessment, all pieces that would impact proficiency and the learning culture. What we have focused on is communicating with families, because we all know, if we work in a school, that a lot of kids are being raised by other family members now. We don't just want to say communicating with a biological parent. There's a lot of other people that are having a hand in that, so we want to focus on the whole family. And we had some issues here that we were looking at, and of course, if you're in a high school, you know that parent level participation decreases over time. It's not like the level of participation maybe when they start out in elementary. So we were seeing poor turnout at parent-teacher night, low student attendance, a low parent survey rate. We teamed up with the Pritchard Committee earlier this year to do a student voice survey, and we had a really difficult time getting enough parent feedback on those surveys so that they would have enough data to work with. So that was an issue. One of the major concerns to me, though, was this 4th bullet. As a principal, some of my very strongest and best teachers expressed a concern that they were terrified to call parents, to contact them. And see, these are some of my strongest people. So that really spoke loudly to me, and I think that perhaps I've been out of the classroom so long, and I've talked to so many parents as a school level administrator, that I have forgotten maybe if I'm within those 4 walls in that classroom and those people aren't showing up to parent-teacher night, that maybe they don't have as much interaction. So we wanted to find a means to increase that and make it painless. Lastly, we have outdated contact information in Infinite Campus. Phone numbers change constantly, addresses change, and then we just had a lack of parent contact procedures. So that's what's driving this problem of practice. This is just our template for the theory of action. I'm definitely not going to go through all that. I know you were hoping that I would, but I'm going to spare you, okay? It's pretty well just lists the different agencies within our school or outside the school that could help us with this problem.
After we defined the problem, the first thing we looked at was, what do we want to get out of this situation? What do we want to achieve? And we wanted the students to experience an increase in positive relationships with all shareholders, teachers, other students, parents at home. We wanted them to feel safe and valued at school and at home. We wanted them to feel supported at home. And we wanted student ownership of learning, and we wanted successful transition to adult life. Now, when we first started, we started talking about a playbook, and we had no real idea of how we were going to roll this out to other faculty. We didn't know if it was going to be in a outline, study guide type format in a Word document, but We attended a KVEC training through ACT, through ACT, and it was I wrote it down, Jim Knight Foundation. And while we were there, they had this visual. And we decided that maybe we could take this visual and we can make it interactive. We said, if we take the main thing we're working with, which is communication, and that's our central idea up top, communication reinforces working relationships and builds a culture that supports learning through parent contact with student connection, utilizing school contacts and through professional learning. So we had 4 components to the central idea that communication needs to improve to help students achieve at home and at school. So the first component we're going to talk about is the parent contact. Now, the parent contact has 4 or 5 links under it. And the first link is a Google form used by us teachers to actually log and keep track of when we call parents and what we talk about, what parent did we call, what day did we call. And the neat thing about Google Forms is after we're finished, we submit it. Mr. Meadows, our principal, gets a record, an Excel sheet of what we did at that moment. It goes straight to an Excel sheet. He keeps track of it that way. No more getting 40 emails the week we're supposed to call home. We also had a conversation starter list. I know me personally, when I first start calling, it's not the second or third or the fourth phone call I dread. It's the first one. Once I start and the conversation starts rolling, everything's fine. So we have a list of conversation starters to help teachers get over the hump and get in the rhythm of calling parents. And a lot of times we don't call home or say anything to the kid as long as they're good. And we decided to throw a praise form in. And this praise form is used to reach out to those students who are not overly successful all the time because they get the praise. Not used for the students who are constantly in trouble. It's used for the student in the middle, in the back, who never speaks, who maybe you don't know their name by Christmas. And we have a calendar of events. Handy, it's on the link. So what would happen, if you'd go back, if we can, is if I'm sitting at my computer, I'd have this item pulled up on my desktop, I'd open it, and everything I need for communication is there. If I'm making a phone call to a parent, I simply click, and this is not an active live version, it wouldn't work or embed in it. But I would click the phone call log, and the Google Docs form would pop up. I would type, date it, time it, student name, click what we talked about, and it's not me sitting down writing a half-page summary. It's quick, it's easy, it's a good way to make quantitative data from qualitative information. And you can see that once you sit down, everything's there at a point.
You can see that our next component is student connection. We firmly believe that our students, if they're not connected to someone at school or if teachers aren't connected to their students, that learning just isn't going to take place. So one of the first things that we've done this year is we created a really short, quick Google form where all of our students just brought it up, went to the link, and they clicked 3 teachers in our building or even support staff. They weren't all teachers. We had classified and certified people in there. We wanted to see who our students connected to. Because in the event where things aren't going well, we want to know who those kids go to or who they feel like, you know, hey, this person has my back and I really like them, and we just want to see that data. So we've done that. Every bit of that information, once again, has went to a spreadsheet. We love our data. And, you know, for me personally, I can look on there, and there's times when you think, hey, I didn't know that kid felt connected to me. I had no idea. It's really eye-opening to see that, which kids feel connected to you and maybe which kids you thought was connected to you that maybe weren't. So we have that data to look at so that we can build the proper relationships that we need to within the classroom and out of the classroom. Our next, here's a look at the survey that we gave them. All they had to do is put in their name and click, and then there was a drop-down menu where they could select, and we even had in there, we had them choose one teacher the first time, but the next 2 drop-down menus had the option, I only connect with one teacher. We needed to see the kids in our building who did not feel a connection with a staff member, because that's very important. That knows that, you know, that tells us there's a kid who may be at risk, and we need to identify someone who could maybe establish a connection with that student. Our next step is to create a teacher-student rapport form where we kind of name them and claim them, where our staff would look at a list of our student body, where suppose I'm having an issue with Jaden, and I just don't feel a connection with her, and I see that Jason has claimed her. And if Jason has claimed her, I can go to him and say, hey, I see that you have a connection. What can I do to make her more successful in my classroom? So we want to name them and claim them, kind of take care of them, maybe pulling them in every now and then, ask them about their grades, ask about career choices, just a little bit of trying to keep kids from falling through the cracks. And that form is not on there yet. We did that a few years ago, but didn't do a whole lot with it. And that will be our next steps with this component. Next, there's no denying that social media is a huge part of communication. If you don't use social media in your school to tell your story, someone else will. Every school has had nightmare issues with social media. So we have identified a coordinator within our building to communicate mainly through Facebook, because that's what families use. But we also have a Twitter handle that one of our teachers who's very good with social media, she's our social butterfly. We have teachers submit things that are going on in their classroom so that she can post different things that our students have achieved or been successful at. That is something that we have really tried to beef up a lot this past year. Another thing you see there is outreach committee. Personally, I was working on a project this year where I had realized that we have students in our building. There's only about 600, but I had a student who had a parent pass away and I didn't know about it till after that student had already come back to school. Even though it's a small community where our students have different last names than maybe the people that they are living with, I did not make the connection. They weren't listed in the obituary. So this outreach committee consists of people who are typically in the know. And this committee is there so that when events happen in students' lives, that we make sure our staff, the important people in that who's on the schedule for that staff or coach, that those staff members know what is going on with that kid. What? Okay, I'm going to hurry. So, but anyway, and also in that event, we did have a staff member. We want to make sure if there is a death, someone attends, like the viewing, takes food to them, and is there on behalf of the family. Okay. Mr. Meadows is going to finish us up with professional learning.
We're going to wrap this up quickly because we're over. So the professional learning link is just a link of various resources. We've linked some articles there from professional journals and magazines about what parents expect from the schools, what parents expect in a form of communication. And we also, I'm a big fan of Todd Whitaker, and he has a book called Dealing with Difficult Parents, and that's kind of negative sounding, but there are a lot of good strategies in it that are just good communication techniques. So we use some of our ACT money to buy some copies of that book to develop a professional library. And we had 2 team members that also participated in a poverty workshop that we're going to have them lead us in as a school-wide staff to help us understand our community. And our next steps would just be to expand the playbook, refine our data collection processes, and then as we move forward, hopefully begin working on another chapter of that playbook. Sorry about running over.